In 1992, Hurricane Andrew was wreaking havoc throughout Mississippi. As the storm tore through the Northeast, a 13-year-old girl disappeared. According to the police, she was the unsuspecting victim of a callous and a calculated criminal who used the chaos of the storm as a cover for her abduction and possible murder. Today, we're looking at the disappearance of Leigh Occhi. Leigh Occhi was born on the 21st of August 1979 to parents Donald Occhi and Vicki Felton. Her parents have both served in the military, and after their divorce in 1981, Donald was relocated. He and his daughter enjoyed a close relationship and would visit each other whenever possible. While she was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, her and her mother eventually moved to Tupelo, Mississippi. In late August 1992, phenomenal rain and furious winds were raging throughout Tupelo. On the night of the 26th, Leigh slept in her mother's bed due to her fear of storms. The following morning, they had breakfast together and discussed the day ahead of them. Leigh was going to go to an open house at her middle school with her grandmother as the new semester hadn't yet started. Later that evening, Vicki and Leigh were going to go out for a meal. Vicki left for work at around 7:30 a.m. This was a big step for her, as it was the first time the 13-year-old Leigh would be left alone at home. She had only become a teenager the week before. When she arrived at work, Vicki heard on the news that Hurricane Andrew was heading their way, and so called the house to check on Leigh. Leigh never answered the phone. Panicking, Vicki tried again, but her call went unanswered. Knowing this was out of character for Leigh, Vicki felt something was desperately wrong, and so left work at 8:30 a.m. and headed straight home to 105 Honey Locust Drive. Upon arriving at the house, she saw that the garage door was open and the light was on. The light in the garage would only activate within a few minutes of the door being opened. She also noticed that another door to the house was unlocked. As it was the first time that she had left her daughter alone, she had been sure to secure the house before she'd left. As panic began to set in, she went about searching the house for Leigh. She called out Leigh's name, but was met with silence. When she went inside, she was confronted by a disturbing sight: a pool of blood on the floor, with blood splattered up the wall. When she made it to Leigh's room, she saw that her favorite blanket had been left in a crumpled heap on the floor. It was then that Vicki called 911. She frantically told police that she needed assistance. Her daughter was missing, and there was blood in the house. The police were quick to arrive on scene. They could find no evidence of a forced entry, leading investigators to believe that Leigh could have opened the door to someone. Further searches of the house found even more blood, along with a significant pool in the hallway. Blood was also found in Leigh's bedroom, the bathroom, and on her bedroom door. The blood was still wet, and the splatter pattern and hair strands on the door frame were consistent with a significant head injury to someone around 5 foot. Leigh was 4'10". The blood in the bathroom led investigators to believe that whoever had been at the house that morning had made an attempt to clean up based on the evidence stacking up in front of them. The police believed that Leigh had been murdered inside the home. Upon searching her bedroom, Vicki told police that several notable items were missing, including Leigh's shoes, some underwear, a sleeping bag, and her glasses. In the laundry basket, they found her blood-stained nightgown, meaning that Leigh must have been wearing something else when she either left or was taken from the house. In charge of the investigation was Tupelo Police Chief Bart Aguirre, and he knew that the nightgown provided a vital insight into what could have happened to Leigh. He said, because it looked like the blood had dripped down onto her nightgown. You would think that the injury had to be above the neck, possibly. The police quickly mobilized and formed search teams throughout Tupelo in a desperate bid to find Leigh. They had their description of her: 4'10", 95 pounds, with blonde hair and hazel eyes. The police trawled through the woodlands in the surrounding areas, but they could find no trace of her. Due to the weather, search dogs were unable to pick up a scent. While it is now the backbone of most police investigations, in the early 1990s, DNA testing was still in its infancy, so the police had to use blood typing. The investigators were able to determine that the blood was type O. Interviews were conducted with people throughout Tupelo. Family, friends, classmates, neighbors, and teachers were all questioned, but the police still had no credible leads. Rick Hammond, who wrote for the Daily Journal as a crime reporter, said, "The first few days, it was very frenzied in terms of trying to find out if she might be alive somewhere and injured. Looking for places she might have been hidden, injured, lost." Her father, Donald, who had been stationed out of state in Virginia at the time of her disappearance, could not contain his rage. This coward must have really felt like a tough man or woman to beat a little girl to death. "Often I cannot help but think of how horrified Leigh must have been while this piece of garbage beat her to death and watch her bleed out in the hall." The small city of Tupelo was suddenly at the center of a media firestorm. The place famous for being the hometown of Elvis Presley was now famous again, but this time for a much more sinister reason. It was the kind of place where people felt safe leaving their doors unlocked. It had a strong sense of community, and it was a place that people were proud to call their home. Rick Hammond said that the people of Tupelo wanted some sort of reassurance that this wasn't a stranger who showed up at her house and abducted a girl. Her father said, "She was a smart, sweet little girl. She was a daddy's kid like all little girls are. She liked to be hooked, she liked pizza, she liked dogs." This idyllic city had suddenly been turned upside down with the disappearance of one of their own. Everyone knew a girl like Leigh. A week after her disappearance, a worker in McDonald's said they had seen a girl in the drive-thru that bore a resemblance to Leigh. The police were quick to pursue it. However, this would prove to be a false alarm. Rumors also began to swirl around Vicky's ex-boyfriend, Barney Yarborough. He and Vicky had recently called an end to their relationship, and Barney had allegedly been abusive towards Leigh. There were also reports that Leigh had arrived at school with a black eye and bruises, but this was not corroborated. He was immediately pulled in for questioning by investigators. However, he was able to provide a substantiated alibi, and he passed a polygraph test. The police were back at square one. On September 9th, 2 weeks after Leigh vanished from her home, a package arrived at the house. It was an 8-inch envelope addressed to Barney Yarborough, Vicky's ex-boyfriend, and the return address was the same as the mailing address. In it were Leigh's glasses that had been taken from the house on the day she disappeared. The postmark showed it being sent from nearby Boonville. After this, the FBI were drafted in to help with the investigation. It was sent to the state crime lab in Jackson for analysis of the handwriting and the DNA. They tried to extract DNA from the stamps on the envelope, but whoever had sent it had used water instead of saliva. The police chief believed that the glasses had been mailed in an attempt to divert the investigation. Donald was told by several locals to look more closely at Vicky. He commented saying, "I was already doing that. I don't know if her mother was involved." The police too would soon turn their attention to Vicky. As part of the investigation, she was given 3 separate polygraph tests, 1 with the Tupelo police and 2 with the FBI. Upon analyzing the results, independent examiners stated that she had shown signs of deception in every single test. The police chief said in 2017, "You still can't eliminate her. There are still too many unanswered questions for Vicky, and I don't know if that is unusual for somebody to go off to work and say, 'Well, I just left Leigh, but I'm going to call and check on her.' Why check on her that soon after she just left her?" In a 2012 interview with the Daily Journal, Vicky said that Leigh would never have opened the door to a stranger, so anyone Leigh could have let in must have been someone she recognized and trusted. The person who she suspects is involved with her daughter's disappearance lived just a mile away from them, was a Bible school teacher, and shared Leigh's passion for horses at the stables just off North Thomas Street. A man called Oscar McKinley Kearns. 9 months after Leigh vanished from her home, Kearns abducted a girl he met through a church in Tupelo. She was alone at her house at around 7 a.m. when he arrived under the guise of taking her to school. Instead, he drove her to a secluded area in DeSoto County. and subjected her to a horrific and prolonged sexual assault. He then drove her to school, where she reported him to the police. He was convicted and sentenced to 24 years in prison, suspended for 16. After serving less than 4 years in custody, he was freed. He was again convicted in 1999 for kidnapping a couple and sexually assaulting the woman. On November 9, 1993, the Clarion Ledger reported that a skull had been found in a ditch in Monroe County and that it had been identified as Leigh. A few days later, this was retracted. After further testing, it was revealed to be the remains of Pollyanna Sue Keith, who had gone missing in March of that year. In 2009, Leigh's mother Vicky said that she did not accept anything for sure, and until a body was found, she would remain hopeful that Leigh is alive. Despite the suspicious circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Leigh Occhi, no trace of her has ever been found. Her father Donald said, "I don't know if we will ever find out what happened." If you have any information relating to the disappearance or whereabouts of Leigh Occhi, then please contact either the Crime Stoppers of Northeast Mississippi, the Tupelo Police Department, or the Federal Bureau of Investigation.